Awesome. Recording started. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our 66th community call. My name is Nimire Uversky, and I will be your host today. I'm just a Dapr contributor, but I'll be kind of walking us through our call for today. Okay, so for today's call, we have only a few topics. So we're going to start off with a DaprCon update, and then we'll give it to Yaron to actually do talk about AWS S3 file uploads with Dapr and do a demo there, and then kind of walk through the OpenTelemetry Protocol support that we're planning for 1.9. And then we'll close up with just a Q&A. Okay, but first, let me start off with just the DaprCon update for DaprCon 2022. Okay, so DaprCon is happening, just in case anyone has not heard yet, and we're still accepting submissions. So if you have any Dapr related topics that you want to present at DaprCon, we'll be accepting proposals through August 19th, so just another week or so. So DaprCon will be hosted at as a part of KubeCon this year on Tuesday, October 25th. And if you want to submit an actual submission, you can actually find the link here. So I'm going to actually just show you here. If you click through, let me go back to the homepage for the community repo. But if you go to the community repo, scroll down, you'll actually see under your other documents a link to DaprCon 2022 details. And this will give you just some information about DaprCon in general for this year, and then a link to the form here. So you can go ahead and put your information here, and then we'll go ahead and contact you for more information about your proposal. In addition to that, I just wanted to announce that KubeCon CNCF has put up our DaprCon information on KubeCon. I kind of took a screenshot here, but nothing beats live. So if you actually go to, let's just say the homepage for KubeCon here, and you go to attend and experiences, you'll see a bunch of different events that are happening during KubeCon, and DaprCon is officially listed as one of them. So we're up on the site, everyone. So yeah, if you want more details, check here, or we'll also just give more information on our community calls, and we'll be tweeting about it nonstop. So if you have a proposal, please go ahead and submit one. Okay. In that case, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic, which is just, we're going to give it to Yaron to cover AWS S3 file uploads. Yaron, do you want to share your screen or?
Oh yeah, I can share my screen.
Or actually, do you want me to just go through the slides and then you
can share?
No,
I need to share it because I'm doing demo, so it'll be easier.
Sounds good.
All right. And let me know when you can see it.
Yep, we can see it.
All right, cool. So let's talk about AWS S3 file uploads with Dapr. So Dapr has the concept of a binding. For those of you who don't know what it is, bindings are a way to bind data or operations to and from your applications when they're interacting with third-party systems. One of these systems might be a cloud provider blob storage, for example, like Azure Blob Storage, or Amazon S3, or Google Storage, and others. So Dapr has bindings for all three of them. And normally, if you're calling Dapr in HTTP, this is what it would look like. You'd basically be issuing a post call on the bindings endpoint, and you would pass in the data. So the app needs to have the data read in memory, and then it sends it over the wire. This is also supported by gRPC. This is just the HTTP example of that. And then Dapr, acting as the sidecar, as the out-of-process will basically get the data and send it over to the configured binding, one of these three in this case. So what happens if we want to upload a file? Well, today, the application will need to read the file in its entirety and then send it over the wire to Dapr, which will then send the contents to the configured component. We are working on streaming, which will make this more efficient, as the app will be able to stream the file to Dapr and then hopefully all the way to the component. But still, you have I/O operations of sending the data between the app and Dapr for the streaming connection. The S3 binding in particular has a specific metadata that you can send, and metadata are basically like these hints that Dapr components have that enable it to expose a richer set, a richer feature set for all of its components. And in this case, we have a file path property. So you would be calling the same bindings endpoint, but here the app doesn't have to read the file. It's basically telling Dapr, hey, grab the file off the file system. This is the file path. And so Dapr will essentially be reading the file. So what does this look like in practice? I'm going to go to VS Code here. Let's see if this is the correct demo. Yep. All right. So I have VS Code. You can see it, right? Waiting for confirmation.
Yep, we can see.
Yeah. All right. So what I have here is a file called hi.json. Hi there. And I have a component. First, I have a circuit store. I don't want you all to see the secret key that I'm going to use for AWS because, well, you're the internet and I don't trust you. Normally, I don't trust a lot of people, but that's okay. So I have a secret store as local file here. It's pointing to a secrets.json file that I have in my file system that contains the secret. This is a regular Dapr component for local secret storing. And here's my S3 component here. I have the access key, the endpoint, the region, the bucket, all of the metadata for S3 configured here, and I have a secret reference that references the local secret store. So this is pretty standard. This is how you define a binding for Dapr to use. In this case, it's S3. And notice I don't have an application here. So what I'm going to do is just do a DaprCon for an app ID of uploader. And I'm going to use the Dapr CLI to just run the Dapr sidecar without an application, which probably means it's not really a sidecar in this stage. It's more like a mini car or a small car, I think, actually. Never mind. So we're going to run this, and I'm just giving my app an ID, and this is the port that Dapr is going to use, and I'm pointing it to the components folder, which is going to load the S3 bindings. So I'm going to run this, and we can see that we're all up and running here. And what I can do now is just act as the application, go to Postman here, and then issue a call to Dapr's HTTP endpoint. So I'm calling the bindings S3 endpoint, which basically tells Dapr invoke the S3 binding. This is a regular structure that a binding operation has. So we're telling it to create, which means we want to create a file. And here I have metadata. The key is just the file name that I'm going to upload. And then we have the file path here. So normally what I need to have if I were using any of the other bindings was to just put data in place. But in here, I just have the file path, so I can go ahead and call this, and I'm getting back the location. If I go to this, if I take this and put it in the browser, we should be getting not found. And my Mac is having issues. Yep. So, yeah. I probably put something to the.
I think your URL. Look at your URL. You copied the AWS.
Yeah, I did, and all right. So let's click this. All right, yeah, and we're getting access denied because I'm not opening the URL publicly. But if I go here into my bucket and I refresh this, and we can see we have the file. And so this is Dapr doing the upload instead of my application needing to read the file all into memory and then sending it to the Dapr sidecar. So this is the S3 binding uploads, and all components can be extended to have this functionality, basically. So, you know, it's not just the S3 binding, it can also be extended to Azure Blob Storage or Google Cloud Storage. Any questions? All right. So Nimide, shall we move on to the OpenTelemetry portion?
Sure. There is actually one question in chat. I think there's just a question about, will this feature be added for other backends too?
Yeah, I think you just answered that. Yep.
Yep. So there's currently no open issue for the other backends, but you know, if there is, we can triage it into the milestones. So if you want to see it, open issue for it. We had this ask from the community for the S3 binding, so that's why it's there.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry has been sort of an issue, an ongoing issue. Well, maybe not an issue, but a challenge for Dapr and many other projects for a pretty long while. So I'm not going to go into the history of how OpenTelemetry came to be, but essentially it's a combination of different projects like OpenCensus and OpenTracing, which really came together to reconcile and create a standard APIs and specification sets for tracing and metrics. It's a CNCF hosted project, and it basically came to stop the fragmentation of different tracing and of just different tracing APIs like Zipkin, Jaeger, and all the rest. So OpenTelemetry is basically made out of several components. It has a receiver that can receive traces and metrics, and then it has an exporter. So it will receive events, and then it will export them to things like GCP Stack Driver or Application Insights or Jaeger or Zipkin or other tracing protocols. By the way, if you go to Google and you search for OpenTelemetry collector architecture, one of the first images that come up is this with the Dapr one. So that's kind of neat. But here's how Dapr works with OpenTelemetry. You have your applications here, and they're calling to the Dapr sidecar, and every operation that goes through the Dapr sidecar basically gets traced, not with metrics, but tracing specifically through OpenTelemetry collector if you configure it. So up until today, Dapr supported a single protocol, which was the Zipkin protocol. And that was the only one you could use. It was the Zipkin API. The historical reason why we didn't do this until now is because most of the OpenTelemetry SDKs were not in a stable state where we could replace the OpenCensus ones with them. And so we used OpenCensus, and specifically we used the Zipkin API because the OpenTelemetry collector also supported that API. So you would basically call Dapr, and then Dapr would use the Zipkin protocol to talk to the OpenTelemetry collector, which has support for the Zipkin protocol. And based on your configured exporter, it would export it to your backend monitoring tool of choice. Like I said earlier, AWS S3, GCP Stack Driver, you name it. And so the Zipkin protocol has some limitations, of course, compared to OpenTelemetry. First of all, OpenTelemetry has much richer specification set. And like I said earlier, it's the way to go forward because it's the standard. And so in 1.9, Dapr will have support for OpenTelemetry Protocol 2, and I will show you what that looks like. So if we go to VS Code, and let me open up the OTel here. This is the first thing I'm going to run is I'm going to run the OpenTelemetry collector locally. So this is a local example. You can, of course, run this on Kubernetes. Once we release 1.9, we're going to have tutorials in place to show you how to do that. But the first thing I'm going to do is just run the Docker container for the OpenTelemetry collector. This collector is going to get the tracing emitted from the Dapr sidecars, and then it's going to export them to Zipkin, which I also have running locally. So if I do Docker PS, I can see that I have Zipkin running here, and Redis and some Dapr image that I'm not using. So we defined the single exporter, which is Zipkin, and the receiver is OTLP, which is the OpenTelemetry protocol. And this is just standard stuff. This is just setting up the Zipkin exporter, telling the OpenTelemetry collector, where is my Zipkin endpoint? This could be Azure Monitor, or GCP Stack Driver, or any of the other supported exporters. And this is a gRPC endpoint. This is the endpoint that Dapr is going to talk to. So you need to configure Dapr to use this endpoint. So this is a standard OpenTelemetry YAML, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to do Docker run. And this is going to run the OpenTelemetry collector protocol for me with port 4317, which is default protocol. And I'm pointing it to this configuration file here. Yeah, and that's basically it. So I have the collector up and running. And what I want to do now is run a Dapr tutorial for the Node and Python applications. But before I do that, I actually want to take a look at the configuration file that we're going to use. So up until now, if you've been using Dapr, you know this configuration file because this is what you need to set up the Zipkin protocol support. So you would basically have Zipkin showing up on the tracing spec here. You would have an endpoint address. You would basically point it to that. And this is what you would do to set it up with either Zipkin or the OpenTelemetry collector, because the OpenTelemetry collector has this support for the Zipkin API, where it can take a subset of the OpenTelemetry specification that's supported through Zipkin and convert it to OpenTelemetry. So this is the old file, but now in 1.9, we are going to have this section here. So we have an OTel section, which has an endpoint address. Here, I'm pointing this to the OpenTelemetry protocol for the 4317 port. We can choose the protocol. So this is going to be gRPC and is secure. You can configure whether or not the connection is encrypted or not. And so we have a sampling rate here. That's a property that we've had from before that we're going to keep. And there is an additional item here called stdout false. It's going to be a little verbose if I turn on the true, but you'll actually be able to see much more verbose information about the traces that Dapr is emitting to the OpenTelemetry agent. So I'm just going to use this, and I am going to go back to the quick starts here. And I'm going to run the node application. So I'm going to do DaprCon for the node app. And it's port, yep, because I need to go to my earlier demo and stop the sidecar here. All right. So we have the OpenTelemetry collector up and running, and I'm just going to run this Dapr sidecar. This is a node app that will receive calls through service invocation from a Python application and save these to Redis using the Dapr state store API. So for the Dapr Python app, I'm just going to run the Python app. And if we go here, we can see that we're getting a new order. And if we open up the browser and start looking for queries, we can see that we're getting all the traces. This is pretty similar to what you've been, seeing so far, but now this is backed by the OpenTelemetry protocol and not the Zipkin protocol. And so, yeah, this is the change. So now in 1.9, we're going to be using the stable SDKs. We're basically removing all of the now legacy OpenSense SDKs, and we'll be able to use additional specifications and features from the OpenTelemetry specification, which is pretty great because it's a standard, really. And if we go to dependencies here, it should show us the tracing list. Yep, and that's pretty much it. So you can get a hold of this. This is already in master branch. Kubernetes support is not yet enabled, but it's going to be this week or next week. And yeah, try it out. And if you have any feedback to give about this, or if you find any bugs, please feel free to open an issue and file these up for maintainers. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. In that case, can you guys see my screen? I'm sharing. You should be seeing Dapr Q&A now.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. Okay, so then with our last topic, I guess we'll just go ahead and do a Dapr Q&A. Are there any general questions that anyone has about things that were presented today, or roadmap items just in general?
I actually have a few questions about DaprCon.
Yeah, sure. Fire away.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, registration is free, right, for all attendees?
Yes, as long as you've purchased a KubeCon ticket, you should be able to see attend DaprCon for free.
Yeah. Do you think we need to make that explicit, or?
Yeah, we can definitely make that more explicit if it's not clear. I tried to put it inside of at least the KubeCon wording, but yeah, I can go ahead and just add that into the GitHub page that actually has the information about KubeCon there, or DaprCon.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Will we be giving away free swag?
I would love for us to give away free swag. I think we should bring our swag there and then just give it out to people who join. So yes.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I think we can strike up a conversation with CNCF about that.
Do they typically have an issue with us just giving away swag?
No, in KubeCon 2019, we were giving away, I think, hundreds of Dapr t-shirts, and we weren't even a CNCF project back then, so they had no issue.
Okay, yeah. They seem pretty okay with it. So
Yeah.
any other questions from people? Happy to answer all your burning DaprCon questions.
How many sessions are we expected to have?
Oof. So that is not finalized yet. So we have space for a few different configurations. I think we have space for like, barring the keynotes, we could either do 3 to 4 different deep dives or a mixture of deep dives and customer presentations that are 30 minutes long, plus 3 lightning talks, or we can do an additional session. So we could do 4 to 5 different deep dives and no lightning sessions. So it's kind of depending on the people that are submitting proposals and me kind of just digging into what they're trying to do. So yeah, I guess we'll have more on that later once we have, probably after the submission deadline, when we have more people that have confirmed whether or not they're able to join or not. We should have a better idea of what that schedule should look like.
Yeah, that makes sense. And schedule, the deadline is August 17th, right?
Actually, I just talked to CNCF on Monday. Our deadline's been extended. So since we're not a co-located event, our deadline is a bit more lax. So we don't have to submit our agenda until September 12th. So we've gotten about 2 more weeks added onto that, which is nice. I still want to see if we can get it finalized earlier, since CNCF does have like a lot of requirements and feedback that we have to make sure we're meeting. But yeah, so we have an additional 2 weeks, so we don't actually have to have the full agenda in until September 12th.
Okay, that's good.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, there's nothing else. Feel free to send me any of your questions on DaprCon. I'm always happy to answer them and clear up anything. But I guess we can go ahead and just close out the community call for today.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.